Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. I am coming to you live today with Christine Massey, a Canadian legend, you could say, that I have known about for many, many months, right from the inception of the thought that things aren't like they appear to be. So if you're new to the King Heroes Journey podcast, I welcome you. Please do like and share this. Hello, Sane Lady. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. And this is probably going to be good and shadow banned as usual. And if you're not familiar with Christine, I am going to bring her on momentarily and tell you a little bit about her. I'm sure you guys are familiar. So here we go. Hello, Christine. Welcome.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. To say hi to Earthship Bear and my good friend Sane Lady. And this is going to be a powerful interview. I'm pretty excited. This is a long time in the coming. Definitely had you on the radar in a big way. And it became of utmost importance in 2020 when I think things may have changed. I'm going to ask you some questions about that. But for those who aren't already familiar, Earthship Bear, by the way, says you are the bomb. Christine Massey is a former statistician from Canada who's been known for her extensive use of freedom of information requests to investigate the scientific evidence for the existence of the boogeyman virus that we're not necessarily going to name very many times just in case it gets us taken out here, and other alleged viruses. She began her inquiries in early 2020 after becoming skeptical of the official narrative surrounding that pandemic, drawing on her background, which included activism against water fluoridation, very important issue, which taught her to question public health claims. Her research focuses on whether health institutions can provide essential foundational evidence for the existence of those alleged viruses, as well as for contagion and the claimed pathogenicity of any bacteria. So welcome, Christine. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Beth. And happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I had a beautiful birthday weekend. It was actually really nice. They didn't chemtrail yesterday. That was, I don't know if that's a buzzword. Yeah. So I felt like it was just for me, clear blue skies and a bit of sunshine and some good company. And we had to eat cake. I thought I was going to not eat cake, but lo and behold, I'm weak once a year. So dumb, but I appreciate that. Yeah, so you've had quite a journey, Christine.
Yeah, it has been a big journey. For me, it began, in the early days of 2020, hearing all the chatter, all the news, all the fear-mongering about the supposed particle that we were all supposed to protect ourselves from and everybody else around us. I started, I knew early on, thanks to people like John Rappaport. He had talked already about, for years, he had talked about that there were serious problems with PCR tests. Mm-hmm. So I knew that much going in, and I found out that's what they were using. And then eventually I came across videos from Dr. Andrew Kaufman, and he was explaining in a very simple, logical manner that anybody could understand the problems with the methodologies that had actually been employed. And so he was showing how if those particles really did exist, how they could be found and purified from bodily fluid or tissue, and versus what was actually being done in the laboratories. And, to bolster the claim that they had isolated the supposed particles. So he explained it really clearly. And then, so then I became aware that, oh my God, it's like even so much worse than I had even thought, and that he was my inspiration to do what I ended up doing. So.
Yeah, he's a kind of OG in the space. He was around. I was lucky to come to around 2015, and pulling back the curtain. If we talk about the wizard's curtain here, and so that was good. I felt actually very fortunate for a little bit of a preamble, looking into it, and then it wasn't as devastating as some of the people who woke up post 2020 or post all the jabs or,
Oh.
all of that kind of thing. So yeah. When did you start noticing that things weren't exactly as they appeared?
With the 2020 narrative?
No, like or was it before then, I guess is my question.
Oh, with just in general?
Right. That's
Yeah. For me, I think it began probably around 2009, somewhere in there. I was working at a hospital in Toronto as a statistician between 2008 and 2012. And sometime in there, I started learning about water fluoridation. And I was just stunned with the information, learning that they were actually literally putting hazardous waste in our drinking water and that it's contaminated with things like arsenic and lead, that, the health authorities say that there's no known safe level of these contaminants. And fluoride itself, it's classified as a water contaminant. Like it's not classified as a nutrient even to begin with, yet they sell us this narrative about, it's a natural nutrient and it's necessary for, protecting the teeth. And meanwhile, it turns out they don't have any scientific evidence. And so that was that for me was the huge topic. I ended up becoming pretty much obsessed with that, trying to get them to stop. And that was just a huge wake-up call, just seeing like, okay, they don't have any randomized controlled trials to show that this is actually safe or beneficial for people to actually ingest this, and that it does what it is claimed to do. And they don't have toxicology studies, long-term toxicology studies on the chemical that they use, only some short-term ones, nothing on people because toxicology studies are done on animals. And so, they just would apply this incredible double standard where they would insist this is a great public health achievement and that it's safe and effective for everybody. And but when you actually look at their evidence, they can't back up their claim. And then when you look at the research that does exist, you find that it's actually pointing in the direction of harm. And that was just stunning. And like I said, you're talking to a brick wall, and it doesn't matter what you tell them, what you show them. Well, I was living, careful how I say things now, but on the land known as Brampton in Ontario, and which is part of the region of Peel. And we had a hero counselor there, John Sprovieri, give him a shout out because that man tried so hard. He was our one champion on council, and he was very outspoken about it, quite unpopular because of it. And again, we had one lady brought in a world expert from India who had years ago been funded by Health Canada, an expert on fluoride. And she told them straight out, and just all kinds of information and evidence put before them. Didn't matter. They just kept going with it because I think as some of us are, realizing now, there's all these other entities, NGOs and the UN and these influences coming in from these, globalist organizations. And that's who they're typically listening to, not the people in the community.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I've noticed, and this is not limited by any means. I'm not going to be popular for saying this, but it's not limited to the mainstream, because where there are allies and especially financial ties, then those weigh in heavily on the choices and decisions. I find that there's much less people who actually like the truth compared with, right, it's at the people have their limits. I'll go so far, but you want to undo my whole paradigm, or you want to threaten my business, which is what it's seen to be. If there's financial allies in the picture, then it's very easy to turn a blind eye. So go ahead.
No, that's absolutely like what you said about it's not just in the mainstream. It's been quite shocking in the last 5 years because I'll just mention what I ended up doing briefly. Some of your viewers, I'm sure, already know, but so as Andy had explained, that the proper steps hadn't actually been done to show that the alleged infectious particle actually existed. And he explained it very clearly. So I started filing freedom of information requests, challenging institutions like Health Canada, Public Health Agency of Canada, Ontario Ministry of Health, etc., for foundational evidence that would be necessary to show the existence of a virus, foundational evidence from anybody, anywhere, not just something that they themselves had carried out. And the responses were coming back like, they didn't have it, they didn't have it, they didn't have it. Like these institutions were literally showing that they couldn't show that that supposed particle even existed in anybody, anywhere. So, so I started collecting these and getting the responses. And of course, I was putting them on social media. And I thought, I guess I thought this is going to catch on like wildfire, because it's so, to me, it's so very logical. And I know just one or two institutions, people will still be like, well, okay, somebody has it. But as the months and years have gone on, and now we're up to like people from around the world helped, and we now have responses from 225 different institutions in 40 different countries. Like it's a huge project that went on for years. So nobody had that foundational evidence. And I later started sort of broadening the way I was wording things to make it more obvious for people. Like, do you have any scientific studies showing that this supposed thing exists? Do you have any scientific studies showing contagion of this supposed illness? And they just never had anything. So I thought, kind of like when I first discovered the water fluoridation, I thought the authorities would, I thought it was all just some terrible mistake and they didn't understand what they were doing, and that this is a no-brainer. Of course, you have to stop doing this. You're also medicating and experimenting on people without informed consent. Like that in and of itself is just, when you stop and think about it, because I was indoctrinated as a child, right? But when you stop and think about it, like, hang on a minute, wait, they're literally putting this in the drinking water, not for the purpose of making the water safe. It was for a way to deliver it into our bodies without us most people even knowing, let alone having informed consent. So I thought when I started pointing that out, that it would be pretty easy. It'd be a no-brainer. They'll stop. And then here we are all these years later. There's even been a 7-year federal lawsuit in the US against the EPA, where the federal judge ended up concluding that water fluoridation poses an unacceptable risk to children's brains. And they're still doing it. And kind of like that, I thought when I started getting these responses from the institution saying that they didn't have any evidence of this alleged particle ever being found in anyone and purified, and you have to do the purification because you can't carry on with valid steps after that, like sequencing and characterization and controlled experiments to test for causation of illness. You can't do that unless you purify. And we can talk about that more later, because I think maybe some people still don't have a good understanding of why that is. But I thought it was going to catch on like wildfire. And, of course, some people did jump in and were helpful. And Pat King was helpful. Like, he brought a lot of awareness. He tried to challenge in court the so-called authorities out there in Alberta. But for the most part, even within the freedom space, the health freedom space, most people were just, we were the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. We were called every name in the book, and we were accused of being CIA operatives and controlled opposition, and you name it, and told, we're going to be responsible for people's deaths because we're telling people these things don't exist, and they do, but nobody can show us that they do, but they do. And like here we are 5 years later, and I'm not so surprised, I guess, given what I've learned about people like, say, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Del Bigtree, their connections or what have you, those big platforms, because they're almost, to me, part of the establishment themselves in a way. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the more what you think is more grassroots. And like, I don't understand. It's been a huge disappointment that people wouldn't run with this information, and so much effort was taken to collect it. Here it is. Here, take it. And I have an affidavit, and I offer to testify. And most people, even in the health freedom space, they don't want to go there. So it's been hugely eye-opening in that way, that just how hard it is, number one, to break through those mental barriers, and that even a lot of people, they don't want to be seen as a crazy person. They don't want to be the ones to put themselves out there. But maybe we can today help cut through that a little, because I always try to tell people, if you just understood the basics, like how it's not really a complicated topic, like literally children can understand. So maybe we can talk a bit more and help make it seem less intimidating for people today, because I think that must be part of what's holding people back. They don't want to be the one to put themselves out there, because then they're afraid they don't know how to really defend the position very well.
Yeah, that's excellent. Let's do that. I just wanted to comment a little bit that what I'm noticing as I've dug further and deeper into various truths, whether it's in the field of health or law in particular, two arenas that were extremely, psyoped and really weaponized against us. It turns out that the truth is not fantastical, right? It's not exciting. It doesn't include. I mean, it can include the whole conspiracy. In this case, it's definitely got that on the other side of it. But I definitely want to hear the basics, but they're not going to be like, wow, like the lies are, basically. And it doesn't necessarily mean everybody knows they're lying. I'm very aware of that. When I did the whole breakdown on controlled opposition and the archetypes of that, I had to become extremely aware that people don't necessarily know that they're propagating lies. They don't understand their own motivations. That's what makes the subject so complicated, complex, because it's not just information in and then behavior and action out. There's a whole mechanism going on in here that stops us sometimes for personal reasons, other reasons we talked about. And so and then also where there is a lack of information for some people, there's this tendency, and I'll use a technical term, that they make shit up. Right? Where there's a blank and they don't know. They don't want to say they don't know. We've been penalized for not knowing or acting, not confident about what we say. And then our imaginations go. I saw so many people, they're inventors in this space. And they can go ahead.
And there's not I think there's a lot of misplaced trust. What I still see, and I've tried to bring this up in other interviews in the past, is the importance of fact checking, because I still see people very quick to, if they see someone who's comes across as trustworthy, either because they have the credentials and they, seem very professional and experienced and know what they're talking about that way, or they're more like grassroots, kind of very honest, down to earth person. There's this tendency to, and if they're saying something against the government or against those handlers that created these narratives, they tend to just trust people. And like you're saying, those people who are telling them things, they don't necessarily know what they're talking about themselves either, or they might be purposely confusing people. But there's just not enough fact checking going on. And like, just for me personally, one of the biggest influences this whole experience has had on me is just like, I keep my mouth shut about almost everything now, because if I haven't really looked into it, I just know, like, it's so easy to be wrong and to think everybody knows this, everybody knows what have you. And sometimes we're just wrong. So just fact checking, like, take the time to actually learn about something maybe before you think you know, and trying to teach other people.
Exactly. Yeah, we've become a culture that's educated by memes, right? So if we see it on a thing and an image and it says this is true, then we walk away with that. I caught myself at that. And early on, I guess was it 2021 by the time the jabs were out, and they were saying here in Manitoba that a 12-year-old could go and do that on their own without any parental consent. And my son was 12, and the dad's going, oh, he can make up his own mind. I'm like, oh, come with me, son. We're going to have a really good chat about this. Luckily, he's to this day completely unmedicated and unjabbed. We also went through a notice of liability process, just not being able to sit back and watch all of this corruption at the local school division level, right up to the governor general. And we used your work, by the way, to go in, and I discovered how many at that point, how many claims were unverified. And I had learned like a parrot to just say these things, but could I back them up? And so that was the one good thing, even though there was so much like crap and not real stuff in that process. But it did teach me to be quiet when I don't really know, when I haven't really found the receipts. Working with Dr. Garrett Smith, he's like next level. If we think the people like yourself, and I mean, you're in his league too, because you're the one that's going to. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt, but the standard is very low, right?
Yeah.
When it's just like I say this, we all know it, and then people just, it's that logical fallacy of well, it's popular, therefore it's true, or it's all everybody knows, and it's not that.
Or it makes the government sound bad, so it must be true.
That's right.
That's what I find people rely on. Like, well, they're against the government, so they're on our side, so let's just go with it. It's like, that's not a long-term strategy if what they're saying isn't actually accurate, and you're not going to be able to demonstrate it.
You nailed it with the on our side. I for sure found myself in that. Are you with us or are you against us? And then so your mind becomes polarized in these two categories, and you start like accepting and eliminating or canceling people based on whether you think but of course controlled opposition comes in and knows that division and polarity are the name of the game. And if you can continue to split people, I even think the no virus world was again a source of weaponization. I don't know if you're free to talk about how infiltrated it may have become. I saw different conflicts from a little bit of a distance. I never dove in and got involved with that myself. But yeah.
Yeah, there is a character. I guess I won't go into the details, but yeah, there is somebody on the scene that I have big question marks around, and that has a habit or quite a preoccupation with telling people things that aren't true about myself and other no virus people. And I should tell you, sorry, there's something I should have mentioned to you from the beginning. My laptop, recently it's had this strange new habit. It'll just go dead all of a sudden, and then I have to unplug it. So if it happens, I apologize. Hopefully it won't happen while we're talking. But so just the fact checking, and not assuming that all is well just because somebody seems to be on our side. But
yeah, and it seems like all of the organic, real movements get co-opted at some point. People see, oh, there's a lot of eyeballs over there. They're listening. We got to come in. And that's why I did the archetypes of controlled op. You got the well poisoners, and you get the people, money-making opportunity. You got a bunch of scared people, need supplements or whatever kind of thing going on. And so our truckers convoy in Canada. Did you make it to Ottawa?
I did. I visited a couple of times. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good for you. Yeah.
It was quite experience.
I did not. Right. I did not make it there, but we know that was highly co-opted as well.
And I have that impression. I never followed it closely, but that's my impression. Yeah.
Right. Oh, at the beginning, I thought the savior had come, and I wept a lot, and the big crowds showing up and the trucks going through. It was all so emotional, and like, we're winning. This is sick.
Yeah. It was good in terms of people, I guess, making connections and that sort of thing. Like, a lot of good came out of it for sure. But it's just disappointing. Like we said, here we are all these several years later, and still people are going along with these narratives about these, supposed health threats and whatnot, instead of just putting the burden of proof where it belongs on the, on the so-called authorities to prove their claims. It's as simple as that, and when I look back now on the water fluoridation, how I handled that, I mean, certain things I would still stick to, but one thing I would do is just get away from discussing studies so much and just hammer more on, you're saying this, you're making these claims, you prove it. Plus, then you still have the part about what right do you have to put something in people's drinking water to medicate them and experiment them on them. But in terms of the safety and effectiveness, just hammer away on them on that, put the burden of proof on them. And the person I was alluding to a few minutes ago, that in the no virus space, who I have questions about, I mean, one of the things this person has said, which just blows my mind, is they've actually claimed that falsifying the establishment's narrative by pointing out how ridiculous their studies are, and with the freedom of information responses, that's somehow not enough, that we actually need to do studies to debunk, like to show something. It's like, no, the burden of proof is on the people making the claim. It's up to them, and their evidence is ludicrous on its face. And we have all these legal confessions and failures, right? So that's the one of the things to just keep in mind, that the burden of proof, it's on the people making the claim. And when it comes to something the government's doing, it's on them. It's not on us to disprove. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that would save people a lot of time if we just focus more on that. You're telling us, but you can't actually show it.
Right.
And then share that information.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then you get into the conditional acceptance. Like, yes, I'll accept this if you can prove that it's actually safe in reality.
Yeah, safe and effective, and in this case, that the thing actually exists, and it's all their various claims. And on that note, I should mention there's actually I think it's a very useful resource that was created by Sally Fallon-Morrill and another colleague here in Canada, and I had a little input into it. And that's right, what you're saying. It's kind of a conditional acceptance. I don't think it actually says that on it. It doesn't, but it's the same kind of idea, where it's for anybody dealing with, say you have chickens in your backyard, or you're a farmer, and the authorities, like the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, start coming to you and saying, "Oh, we have concerns and we want to do a test." We have on my Substack, there's a document that people can use to give to the so-called authorities, and saying exactly that, like, well, we'll let you on the land to test, or people can alter it. They can make their own version, but this is something to get them started. After you provide, and then we ask for all the studies showing all their claims that there's a contagious illness, that the claimed causal agent exists, that the tests have been validated. What exactly do you want to test for? Which tests are you doing? Who are you? Identify yourself, and all that. And I really hope people will start making more use of either that document or something along those lines, like you're saying, conditional acceptance. And yeah, because when we put the burden of proof on them, it's powerful, I think, Mm-hmm. And Michael, there's a gentleman named Michael Obernisha. I don't know if I'm saying his name exactly correct, in England. And he was saying they had done a lot of that conditional acceptances over there, the farmers had, and that had helped them quite a bit. So it's worth a try anyway, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I would love to have those resources. Maybe if you send them to me after, then I can post them in the show notes for people as well.
Happy to.
So, yeah, that's really good. Would you like to go in and do a basic, less intimidating version of being able to explain to your friends why there's no virus if they have half an ear to do that. And
Yeah.
I'll just see there's a few comments in the chat also that 0% of science is making shit up in the real definition of science. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And Christine, does Canadian tap water have a French language option? Sorry, that's just like I thought that was a different question. Mary Benton, the thing with fact checking is some databases are possibly wrong, and some of the people fact checking cannot interpret correctly what they are reading. Like that's
Well, that's actually a really important point, because one of the things like that I became very aware of because of this whole situation was, and this is where people will make the mistakes, where they go online or wherever they happen to be looking, and they find that there are studies saying that they isolated these alleged particles, right? So the big lesson has been, like, and Andy, of course, and Tom Cowan and the Baileys and others have hammered on this also. It'll say in the title and it'll say in the abstract, oh yeah, that's what we did. It's where you have to read the method section. So that's the key to it all. Like you go to the method section and start looking at what did they actually do in that study. When it comes to this topic, most people have to learn some key terminology to be able to figure out what's going on, and it'll help a lot if you look at some of the the talks from Tom and Andy and the Baileys and Mike Stone and whatnot. But that's where everything starts falling apart, because you see, well, hang on a minute, the methods that they applied, they're not even capable. It wouldn't even matter what results they get. It doesn't matter. You're not doing logical, valid procedures and experiments. So yeah, so I mean, shall I go into that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe with some of those terms as well, highlighting the way, isn't the word isolate problematic all by itself?
Yeah, that word for sure. And I was using it initially in the Freedom of Information requests, and because that's the word that the virologists use, they'll say they isolated these alleged particles. But it turns out what they're doing is it's the complete opposite, and they haven't even shown that particle is there. So personally, I prefer to stick to the word purification, just because I find it tends to be a little more clear. There tends to be less, controversy around that word. And so, because what will happen sometimes if you say they haven't isolated the virus, then the people find these studies and they think you're wrong, right? So what you actually need to look for is studies where they actually looked in bodily fluid or tissue and found these alleged particles and separated them out from everything else that's in there, so to purify them. And the reason that's important is because there's two things that need to be done. You need to identify that particle, and these alleged particles, they're said to be submicroscopic, so too small to even see with a microscope. Supposedly they're on the nanoscale. So, you can't, pick them up and look at them from different angles and measure them and whatnot. It's obviously these are laboratory procedures that are being used. But you need to, like, basic things that they do. And I'm no expert on this topic, but one thing for sure we all know about is they claim to have sequenced the particle. And they claim to have they claim to know the size and the density, and they claim to know what proteins it has. So the problem is that what they do is they don't even look in the bodily fluid or tissue, almost never. Like, rarely do you even see that in these studies. Instead, they take the position that they wouldn't be able to find these alleged particles in the bodily fluid or tissue. There would be too little of it. They won't be able to spot it. And that in and of itself that's quite bizarre, because they're telling us it's replicating in the people, and that's what's making them sick and even killing some people. And plus you're claiming that that it's there and you can test for it and whatnot. So if you can't actually find it, you don't actually have any grounds for claiming that it's in there. But this is how things work. They're not at all logical in virology. So they take the position, well, we wouldn't be able to find it, so we're not going to bother looking for it or try to purify it out. So what they do instead is they say, well, we need to grow it so that there'll be more of it, and then, we can find it better. So they do what they'll call a cell culture. And so what they do is they take the clinical sample. It could have been from a swab or lung fluid. They take the sample from the patient. Sometimes they might filter out larger particles, but not necessarily. A lot of the time they don't even do that. And they'll put it in a cell culture. So first what they'll do is, these are cells that they purchase from companies. And there's different cell lines. There's all kinds of different types, but one that gets used a lot in virology, and that was used with the situation that started in 2020, they're often using what are called vero cells. Vero cells are kidney epithelial cells from an African green monkey. So not even dealing with cells from people. It's not like a healthy person's lung cells. Let's see if we can isolate, get the virus to grow and attack the healthy lung cells. It's not even that. It's monkey kidney cells. So right away, people should be saying, like, what the heck? Why on earth would you need to grow this thing that supposedly made, it's a respiratory situation in people? Why would you need monkey kidney cells to grow it? But that's and it seems like those type of cells actually have a tendency to break down pretty easily, so that's probably why they use them, and that will make more sense when I explain a bit more. So what they do is they have the cell line, and they normally, if you just want to maintain the cell line, they have to give it nutrition. And for whatever reason, one of the sources of nutrition that they tend to give is fetal bovine serum, is usually what I usually see it called, which is serum from a cow, from a fetus that was taken out of its mother, apparently in a really horrific manner. And so now you're getting more bizarre elements coming in. So we need kidney cells from a monkey. We need cow serum. And then they might add a nutrient mix as well, and they'll add antibiotics and antifungals. And their logic there is they don't want other contaminant like bacteria, what have you, growing in the dish, which makes sense in a way. Like, you can kind of see logic there, but then you have to take into account, well, how is that affecting the cells? Because it turns out what they eventually do, they'll have a way of maintaining the cell line with those ingredients, but then what they do in the virology studies is they'll drop the fetal bovine serum down to a fraction of what it normally would have, so it's not getting the nutrients. And then they will double the amount of antibiotics and antifungals. So they're not keeping it in its normal situation. So, and then here's what they do. They add the clinical sample to this mixture that they've created. And another big point here is that this is being done in a laboratory, in a dish or a vial. Totally unnatural situation. It cannot tell you anything about what actually goes on in a human body. This is a totally contrived situation. Again, it won't even matter what results you get, because this is not telling you anything about natural living body. But what they do is they put in the clinical sample, and then they'll watch this culture for several days. And if they starts to break down in a certain way, I'm no expert on cell cultures, but if the cells start to break down, they call it cytopathic effects, CPE for short. And this is what they take as evidence that the alleged particles were in the clinical sample, that they grew in the monkey cells, and that they are what caused the monkey cells to break down. Not the starvation, not the extra chemicals.
Antibiotics.
Nothing to do with that. It's this imagined part. It's literally just imagined. Like, you haven't seen it. You didn't show that it was in the clinical sample. You're just projecting based on these effects, and that they've isolated it. Like, it's so far detached from reality. And as I say, even a child could understand, because like one of the analogies we give is, it's like saying, well, they're engaging in the logical fallacy, like circular reasoning, where they say, well, if there is, that thing is in the clinical sample, it will cause the monkey cells to break down. The monkey cells did break down. That means that the thing is the cause of the cells breaking down. And that's just a logical fallacy where, you know, if A, then B, but then they try to go backwards and they say if B, then A, but that doesn't make sense. So it's like saying that, well, if Santa exists and Santa visits the house on Christmas Eve, we'll find presents under the tree. And then Christmas morning, you look and you find presents under the tree. And then you say, there, we know that Santa exists. And not only that, but we isolated him. I mean, if somebody published, you know, everybody could see, and even children, as they grow up, they start catching on, like, this story isn't quite adding up, right? So that's how absurd it is. And literally everything that they do in virology is on that level of absurdity. They don't actually demonstrate what they claim that they're demonstrating. So this is why you need to go to the methods section. So they will say, based on that, we isolated the virus. And what I've been doing is show me studies that you have, that this, you know, an institution like Health Canada, studies that you hold, where anybody in the world, doesn't matter who authored this, they actually found these purported particles in the bodily fluid or tissue and actually separated them out. So I'm not looking for these cell culture studies. I'm not looking for studies where you did a PCR test or some of the other silly things that they do. Like, I'm looking for very clearly, it was stated very clearly, not these other things. This is what I want, just per the everyday definition of the word isolation. And then later I changed it to purification just to make it more clear. So yeah, that's what they don't have. They don't have any of these foundational studies that would be needed. And then just to explain a little bit more, and this is good too, this is important for people to know. There's been a lot of attention on the ostrich situation in Canada for the last almost year now. And one thing that I've heard said many, many times, and I said it myself earlier on too, because this is what I heard, and I still haven't fully learned my lesson to fact check, was that the birds had only been tested with PCR. Two birds that had died were tested with PCR. So I always thought that's all that was done. It was the PCR tests. But it turns out what I learned, and it seems like, I feel like nobody else really seems to realize this, very few people, is according to the court documents, one of the supposed experts of the government, she was saying, no, in her affidavit, she was saying, no, they also did the sequencing and they also did a cell culture. So this is for, because there are a lot of people concerned about that situation. And of course, they're going after other birds too, based on that same narrative, the avian influenza narrative. So it's good for people to know this, because if you think it's just the PCR, there's a lot of awareness about the problems with PCR, but people need to be aware that these other pieces of the puzzle as well, because that way, when you understand them, you can rebut them. If you don't understand it, then you might get stuck and you'd be like, oh, okay, I didn't know they did sequencing and they did cell culture. Some people will think that's legit. Oh, okay, I guess they did show that there's that thing. So I hope I'm making sense. I'm kind of going off on tangents, but
no, that makes sense.
So I already talked about the cell culture and how ridiculous that is. And it's not always monkey kidney cells, but it doesn't matter. The thing is, they bought some cells, they lowered the nutrition, they put in these extra chemicals, and then they just wildly project that it was the thing of interest that they think exists, that's what did it, when clearly you haven't demonstrated that. So in order to demonstrate causation, the way the scientific method works, and even very young people would know this from learning it in school, it's quite simple. You have something, what they call the independent variable. That's the thing that you think might cause an effect. and the effect is the dependent variable. And so what you would typically do, you would have two groups of subjects. One is your experimental group and the other is your control group. And you should keep everything the same as much as you can. And when it comes to people or animals, like, we're not all the same, but one thing that should be done is randomization, so that if you have large enough numbers, if you randomize the subjects to the groups, the experimental versus control, there's little chance. The larger your numbers are, the less the chance is that there's going to be any sort of imbalance between those two groups. So that helps control for potentially confounding variables that you can't control in other ways, or that you're not even aware of. So, and so you'd want to keep all the conditions the same in both groups as much as you can. And then in the experimental group, the one thing that would be different is it gets exposed to the thing that you think might be the cause. So you have to have the thing, like, there's no getting around it. If you want to apply the scientific method, you have to already know that that thing exists, like the particle, and you have to have it, and you need to have it purified, because if you just take someone's bodily fluid or some this contents from the cell culture, which is what you see in some experiments, that's not the thing of interest. They'll do an experiment where that is what they add, and like, you're not even testing the correct hypothesis. You're making claims about the supposed particle, but you haven't even shown that you have it. So then
it's kind of dicey. Could I jump in here quickly? It's still dicey, because the to get a true control is not really possible.
Well, it's not possible for the very reason that they don't have the thing to begin with.
Right. That's a major.
If you actually had that thing, and you had it purified, then you could do your best, at least, to make sure everything's the same in both groups.
Mm-hmm.
And the randomization would help with that.
Right. Just the point, and I'm not sure if it's even a value to make it, but because things are much more intensely complex, where there's the one thing causes the other thing, it's always going to be problematic, and trying to isolate that there's just one thing causing another thing. Good luck with that, because we're in a realm that is everything. It's actually one field in reality.
And I think the scientific method, it's like the best you can do. Like,
right.
How else can you do it? If you're claiming to be a scientist and you want to test a hypothesis, it's on you to use the most rigorous methods that you can do. But I totally agree. And like, even if someone did show that these alleged particles exist and do experiments showing causation, and you don't just one experiment, you need independent groups, doing the same thing over and over, and over, if they keep getting the same sort of results, then you start trusting, that's what's going on. But even then, if you had shown that, that doesn't mean that somebody with a PCR test, that's why they're sick, or especially when the thing isn't actually shown to exist. But even if you found the thing, even if you actually went to the trouble and actually found the thing and verified that thing is in their body, that still doesn't tell you that that's why they are sick. Totally. Because, you know what I mean? There's all kinds of other factors as well. It's like saying you see the firemen at the fire and well, no, that's different. But there's just other factors that can be coming into play too. And it's interesting because even the CDC, they have a document on the testing for the 2020 narrative, where they say right in it that even if you get a positive result, like, that doesn't necessarily tell you that is the cause of any illness, right? And then we also know that there's all these people that test positive and they don't have any symptoms, like they're perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I agree with you that it's that we're in a complex world, and it's to really, really prove causation. That's pretty difficult thing to do. But you can apply the scientific method and this is what people around the world who think the governments have been doing, all these different health institutions, that they have been doing valid, legitimate experiments all these years, and they have done the very best possible, and it turns out there's just nothing could be further from the truth.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the one thing that you said, like repeatable results, that points towards something, even if it's not perfect, then you can, and that's in a way would you call yourself a detective? By the way, do you have a detective spirit, or is it more driven by your activists?
Yes. Not as much these days as I used to, but yeah, I guess
that might be more of a secondary motivation. But yeah, those repeatable results when you can. I've been doing this a lot lately, just in the last year, figuring out a way to eat that's the lowest possible poison and favoring for the greatest amount of detox that would naturally happen if I wasn't being poisoned all the time. And then certain small experiments and learning to make, just add one variable at a time, and for some time to come also, so I can really sit back and actually observe, did one thing cause another thing? And is the cause like this, or is the cause like this? Meaning, do the results change over time? Again, that complexity. And you can start to actually elucidate, like, every time I eat black beans, it seems to go well.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I know it seems like a dumb example, but I had
no. I mean, it's a good point that, it does come down to me, it comes down to, your experiment, you're not really doing an experiment. You're doing things differently on different days. You're not doing an experiment where you have a bunch of different subjects and you're comparing two different groups at the same time. So, that's just how it is. We want to know about our bodies, what agrees with our own bodies. And it can be very complex to try to parse that out.
Yeah, in one body, never mind in many. So
yeah. Well, I think when you have many, then it actually then you can do at least the controlled experiments in a different sort of way, and apply the scientific method. And this is what people think. They think virology is the science, that these virologists are scientists, and that they're doing they have massive amounts of money and these research facilities that nobody else can go into, conveniently enough. And they think there's legitimate research going on. And when people find out, I just keep saying, like, hell's going to break loose when people realize just the degree to which they've actually been misled. So with
that would be nice.
That will be interesting. So the sequencing, I'll just talk about that a bit very briefly too. So what you would need to do if you wanted to sequence something, and again, I'm not pretending to be an expert on the topic of sequencing, but there's some very basic points that you can't get around it. So if you want to know this genome of a particle, well, first off, you wouldn't even know at the beginning with something like, you don't even know if there is a genome inside there, right? You'd have to find out. But if you want to know that whatever genetic material, and I'm just going to take genetic material as a given for this conversation because people are questioning that as well. I haven't done a deep dive into it. I'm like kind of frustrated. People won't even use the information I did get for them, so I'm not going any further.
For sure.
But I'll just assume for now that there's such thing as DNA and RNA, and it might be, I don't know. So that's, to sequence something, that's what you're looking for. So you need to know that the DNA or the RNA that you're going to sequence actually came from the particle of interest. If you don't have purified particles, you only have the snot or the lung fluid or the cell culture. What they'll do is they add an enzyme, and it's so that any cells will break open. And if any those particles of interest actually existed, they would also break open. And that way they're able to separate out the genetic material from all the stuff that's in the clinical sample or the cell culture. So they're separating out that. Well, when you do it that way, you don't, now you have all these millions of different sequences that they detect, they apply their technology. Well, now you don't have a way of saying, well, which ones came from which particles. Like there's no, you can't work backwards. You don't know. That's why you have to have the purified sample, because then, whatever you end up with, whatever genetic material, that's where it came from. It's the only place where it could have come from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why for the sequencing. And then the other thing to know when you hear that they sequence the supposed thing, they don't actually find this supposed genome intact. Never ever, as far as I have ever seen. And this is something for the last year and a half I've been challenging the institutions on too. When I do a Freedom of Information, I'll ask them also show any study where anyone found this supposed genome intact in anyone's bodily fluid or tissue, and they can't even show that. So what they do, and this is a very simple, I'm not going to go into elaborate details on people, but it's just computer modeling. So they detect millions of different sequences, and in the key study for the supposed event that began in 2020, the foundational study where they supposedly sequenced that particle for the first time, they had 56.5 million different smaller sequences to work with. Okay. I mean, come on. This is so, the average person can understand. You took 50, I think they took it from the lung fluid, if I remember correctly. It was either lung fluid or the cell culture, but I think it was the lung fluid. You've got 50, I mean, you're going to have cells from the people. And I mean, the Human Genome Project too, that nobody knows what the genome, if there even is one, of that person that you're taking the sample from. You don't know what sequences just were from them, or as other people have pointed out, bacteria, fungi, stuff they breathed in, like there's all kinds of potential sources for this stuff. And you haven't shown that there is a particle that fits the definition of the V thing. You've got 56.5 million sequences. You don't know the origin of them. You don't know that, you can't look at any of them and say, okay, they all came from that one particle of interest, because you didn't identify something. You're just making shit up. So all this information is in a computer, and with that particular study, they had two different softwares, and they had them both rearranged. They look for areas where part of one sequence overlaps with another, and they have the computer try all these different rearrangements. And the one software ended up with over 1.3 million of these longer sequences they call contigs. The other one, it was over, I forget, I think it was under 1 million, but I forget the exact number right now. Was it 365,000 or something? Anyway, of course, right? And then they just picked the longest one, and they said that's the reference genome. So all these genomes, whenever you hear about a genome for one of these supposed particles, it's just computer modeling, and there's nothing logical behind it. There's no reference, because then when you go back in history and say, well, they were comparing it to an earlier supposed thing to see how similar their new genome is, they were all made up too. They're all just made up. You're just comparing one cartoon, nonsense to another. That's all it is. It's literally just not, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I was about to use the word cartoon. That was, if you don't mind if I jump in, that is a way to appeal to our childlike nature, you could say. And this was something that happened a lot. I'm a studier of archetypes and a pattern hunter. And so that was exactly the archetype that they wanted us to be in come 2020. Stand on the stickers, wave your finger, go home, you're making grandma sick, just exactly the way you would speak to a child. And then they show us the cartoons.
Yes, yes.
Right? And they're profoundly influencing, because if you say virus to someone, they're probably going to get one of those, especially if it's a CV thing, they're probably going to get one of those stupid green pokey things in their mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if they know differently, but those things have been married in their own consciousness. So there's an openness to the truth, quote unquote, truth of that.
Yeah. And they definitely absolutely treated us like children. And they convince people. I mean, many people have pointed out the absurdity of telling people that there's a disease so horrible, so deadly, that you need to go and get tested to find out if you have it. And you might have it and you're not even sick. And they just made us dependent on the authorities. It was just another really drilling it into our head that you could be terribly diseased, you could be a terrible threat to those around you, and you have no idea. You need to come and get our black box tests, and we the experts, they will let you know if you have it or you don't.
Exactly.
Total dependency on strangers, and their tests that you don't understand. And it's pretty much the ultimate when it comes to treating people like children, making us feel it's completely out of our hands. We're totally up to them to tell us what's what.
Exactly. Yeah. No amount of observation or detective work or anything like Dora, nice to see you. Logical fallacy of belief in authority at work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
those pictures.
I was just going to say, like, also these studies, some of these studies, some of them are a lot more complex than others, a lot more intimidating. And there's a lot of jargon, kind of like with law, like they throw around all these different terms with you, and the trick wording, calling something isolation when it's nothing of the sort. They make them sound so complex, and people come away thinking, wow, these people are geniuses. All this complex information and all these intricate steps that they're doing and all this incredible technology that they're using, right? And meanwhile, it's absolutely, ludicrous what they're doing, that literally, if you just explain it in simple words, children literally can see how silly it is. But yeah, it's really getting people dependent on authority figures and technology, and telling you can't understand something. And hopefully we can get through to a few more people today that you can understand it. It's not that complicated. When you focus on the basic elements, you can see that they're just making shit up.
There you go. That's a popular phrase now. Yeah. It's interesting that I'm sure there is by now, and I just am not aware of it, but a resource teaching people how to go in and look at a basic study and look at, certain terminology and where they take you sideways. This is one of the things I'm really grateful to Garrett Smith about, because as he teaches on his live streams, he's showing the medical paper, he's showing the research. He will define words as you go so that you're not tasked to, because if you had to look a word up every time it didn't make sense, it would be like every 10 seconds or so. And now it's come to a point where I can myself go and do a PubMed search and come up with some usable information. Not to say like I understand everything, but I can verify certain things that I can look up multiple studies and look at it from a few different angles. And I know a few key words, like when they say signaling, they're talking about toxicity in a cell or in an animal, or like exhibiting bad signs. So they use certain words to make it seem like it's not that bad, or that's
Yeah.
And the whole peer review process, do you think it's just a matter of incredible corruption, or is it what's going on there?
Well, I can just tell you, when I worked at where I worked at the hospital, was a well-known cancer institute in Toronto. And, some of the researchers there were considered quite high up in their field and whatnot. And I can tell you, when I first started working there, I had just finished my master's degree, and I was shocked to see, well, like, my job was to, I'd meet with a research team, and they would tell me about their project, and then they would give me their data. My job was to clean it, first off, look for things that were missing or didn't make sense, get it tidied up, and to summarize it, and then to perform hypothesis tests on it, like statistical hypothesis tests, not scientific hypothesis tests.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was shocked to learn, as I was doing that, just how not scientific the average doctor was thinking. And these are doctors at a research institution. And they were taking steps around that time to try to correct this. They realized they had an issue there, and they were trying to get the doctors that were earlier in their career training so that they would get better, more scientifically articulate. But it was quite shocking to me that I would, like, over and over again have to explain to somebody, like, you can't draw those conclusions from your study design, because it would just be some observational study. It's not even an experiment, let alone a really rigorous, controlled, randomized experiment. They'd be wanting to draw conclusions about causation, based on, like, data. You just can't do that. And I would have to explain it over and over again. So, well, it seems like, the education for doctors is subpar. They're not getting educated properly in various ways. They're just being told things and expected to memorize it, and not to do the critical thinking, and not to look like, to ask and go looking like, well, where's their actual scientific evidence to back that up? And I was really shocked to see. So I think there's to a large degree, they're just naive, and they have good intentions, and they don't necessarily realize. And I think there is a lot of that going on. And I'm sure among the virologists too, a lot of them think what they're doing is absolutely fine. And they just haven't really stopped and thought it through. Or maybe some of them work in different branches of virology. They're not the ones doing the so-called isolation and sequencing. They're working downstream from that. And they just assume somebody else did legitimate steps. And there's a clip that's been shown numerous times, for example, by Sam Bailey and other people, showing a well-known virologist. I forget his name right now, but he's asked in an interview, like, how do you isolate a virus? And he gets completely, tongue-tied and doesn't know what to say, right? Meanwhile, he's considered someone quite high up in the field.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's two things I wanted to mention about memorization as our primary form of education, right? Here's a body of information. You memorize the things we tell you to memorize, and then you get your degree and can do whatever you want to do or whatever. And I'm really convinced. I did a Breath of Fresh Air episode last week on, it was called Remember. And it was kind of everything memory. Now I have a part 2 coming, because there's so much more I remembered in the process about that's related. And this act of memorization, I think, cancels our, it's almost like you've got a certain bandwidth for memory that might be actually integrated with learning and growing and bringing bodies of knowledge together. And making, connecting the dots, all they don't want us to do, have basic logic. And then the memorization, it fills that receptor that we have and makes people the dumb as ever. I
think, it's shocking. Like, I don't remember it being like this. I don't know if it always was, and I just wasn't noticing, but I've been shocked in the last 5 years, just seeing just how horribly illogical people are these days. It's pretty scary. Mm-hmm. And it seems like with the doctors, they're kept super busy from the time they enter medical school, so they don't have time to go and fact check, and they're not encouraged to question. Doesn't go over very well if you do question. And
sleep deprivation.
So many things that it makes you think, like, somebody higher, so to speak, up the chain knows, like, we don't want these people catching on. We need to keep them busy and overwhelmed and cram all sorts of information into their minds. And then even when people do, like, I feel really sorry for doctors and nurses or other people who've invested a lot. Like, I really do, because you think, first of all, the amount of money that they spend on to go to school, and then they, a lot of them are starting their careers with massive debt. Mm-hmm. And they have just a lot invested personally. And if they're further in their career, they status and just all the perks, the money and everything. And then they, have these people who, with no background, people like me starting to say, like, no, what you guys are doing is completely wrong. I mean, I'm glad I've never had to go through that myself. Like, I can't even imagine how challenging and threatening that would be to people. So that's a big part of it too, that just keeps everything locked in place. Nobody wants to admit that they were wrong all those years.
Mm-hmm.
That we completely wasted time, completely wasted taxpayers' money, scared the living hell out of people,
Mm-hmm.
got people injected, fraudulent tests, like the whole shebang, like especially with what they did in the last 5 years. Like, I'm glad I'm not in their shoes.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective to look at it from. There's when that can of worms open, it's like almost no end to the culpability that starts to show up at multiple levels. And I mean, the more you put that off, the deeper your debt, the deeper your the price of that is going to be, it might not be an earthly price. We don't know, and I can't say anything of certainty for that. I was also going to just mention it wasn't just the educated that were victim to this don't think thing, but the whole, some people say new cage movement or the whole spiritual side. That's more where I've come from. Very grateful I never took to health coaching. I could have done that. Being a cancer survivor, it would have been a logical next level. And I did look into nutrition and all kinds of directions, but I ended up more coming on the side of helping people deprogram. And then the psyop of telling people don't think, get out of your head and into
Yes.
your heart, and then hitting 2020 going like, oh, I gotta think that my brain's actually good. God gave me this for a reason.
Yes. I'm glad you bring that up, because like I went down the whole, like, obviously there are non-physical parts to our existence, right? But yeah, I think there is a lot of programming. Well, there's that Lucius Trust, I think it's called, part of the UN, that pushes a lot of this kind of thinking. And yeah, I do think that's been weaponized against us. And there's a lot of people with good intentions, and I don't mean there's no value in exploring that side of life. I think it's actually really important, and it's what helped me survive. But yeah, there's no emphasis in that whole world, whatever you want to call it, on logical thinking and fact checking. And part of what I experienced was starting to I actually used to become very distressed, and I'm kind of done with all that stuff now. I don't mean that I'm done with it, like I don't believe that there's a spiritual side to us. I don't mean that at all. But what I mean is reading books and listening to what people have to say on those topics. Like, there was so much dogma. There's a lot of dogma. And then I started realizing, well, this person's saying this and this person's saying that, and it doesn't fit, and I don't know who's right. How can I fact check these things? Like, I can't. And yeah, there's just a lot of that. Like, also, like the whole idea too of having a guru, and you just let them tell you things. And yeah, I know there's a lot of good in that world, self-development and self-awareness. Like, I'm not trying to trash all that, but yeah, I have thought about that there's that. It's not good to discourage people to give up their minds and their ability to think. That's a dangerous thing to do.
Exactly. How convenient to have a population that doesn't think, whether they came to it from the spiritual side or the academic side or wherever. So thank you, Chris David. He's all excited to see you here. And just looking at the comments again. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Goebbels, who said, if you make a lie, make it a big one, that the bigger the lie, the more easy it is to believe, or something like that.
I don't know who said that, but I've heard that many times. I'll mention too, if you don't mind, another big piece of evidence that people point to is the electron microscope images of these supposed particles. I'll just mention that really briefly. This is another really easy one to debunk too.
Okay.
So basically all they do, excuse me. So first of all, the first thing to know is with those images, it's almost always the cell culture that they're looking at. So the cell line, the calcium, the chemicals, and the clinical sample. not looking in the bodily fluid. Almost never. I have seen 1 or 2 studies where they actually looked in bodily fluid, but almost never. And they'll just zoom in on a particle and they put their arrow, typically, you'll see a black arrow pointing at something, and they just say that's the thing. And we call it the point and declare method because that's literally all they do. They never purify that thing out even from the cell culture and do all the steps that you would need to do to actually sequence it, characterize it, and do the controlled experiments. So they just literally just point. So that's a very easy piece of evidence too. If you get confronted with those, like ask the people, like, okay, you're pointing at something, but where are the studies where that thing was actually separated out and shown to have the proteins and the genome that we're told that it has? Where was it shown to, invade cells and hijack, take over, replicate, and make people sick? Where was it shown to spread to other hosts and, do all those things that he did? And then they won't have it, basically. And then even if they did by some miracle, but I am confident nobody has that, you still need to show that it's in the people. Like if you're claiming that thing has been circulating in the population and you still don't have a study where you actually found that thing in the people, which they say they can't do, you know what I mean? You can't verify because you can have other things that look similar in those electron microscope images, but you don't know, does it have the genome and the proteins that they're saying? So there's no getting around it. Like you have to find these supposed things in the actual people, and they can't do it. So
Right. Yeah, amazing. They don't even use human tissue for the most part. What you're saying, that's like, wow.
yeah.
Contagion itself is really tricky as a subject because when you get into the terrain model, you do actually seem to have to come back to some form. It's not what they're saying that the particle jumped from your nose to the mouth of the person that's less than 6 feet away from you. And this fantastical story, this is the part no one could make sense to me. I've got all kinds of medical professionals in my family, and I'm like, how did they jump? Is it alive? Does it have a life force of its own? What is this jumping process? And then brother, oh, I know they do somehow. I'll go, I'll get back to you. I never did. So but there is something. So I spent a day with my son a while back, and he was detoxing, and then next thing you know, in a couple of days I'm detoxing too. And I understand that it wasn't a viral transmission, but there was some kind of transmission. Something was happening there.
I'll give you my take on this. So first, I always go back to, okay, we've been told all our lives that being around someone who has a cold or flu, that is a risk to the healthy people around them. Mm-hmm. And yet when you go to them and I've been challenging them on this too, and others have done a lot of work on the contagion part, they can never actually show a scientific study that demonstrates this effect of sick people causing, the presence of sick people causing healthy people to get sick. So that's number one. And then there's experiments where, I'm sure Daniel Reuters wrote a whole book about can you catch a cold?
For sure.
And he had reviewed over 200 studies on that topic, and he found none of them had any scientific evidence that people with colds actually make healthy people get colds as well. And then there's one very famous study that we talk about a lot, which is the Rosenau study from 1919. And this is the study where they had, prisoners, and it was during the time of the Spanish flu, which they said was a highly contagious illness. And they had 10 people who were sick, and they had volunteers. And they tried, it's a very easy study to read. It's on my website. People can find it. Rosenau is the name, Roseau. And other people have written articles about this study too. A few people have. And they would try something where the healthy people were near the sick people, had them cough in their face, things like that. And none of the healthy people would get sick. And it was, if I remember, it was like fairly young male prisoners, which apparently are the ones that were said to have the Spanish flu. Like they're the demographic that supposedly had it the most. And so then they would try something else. They would try another way, and they end up doing all kinds of things that would these days wouldn't happen, because they would say that's unethical. You can't do that. So they would actually take bodily fluid from the sick people and put it straight into the healthy people. They had the healthy people go one at a time, go and sit like 5 minutes, letting the sick person cough in their face, do all kinds of things, and then go on to the next sick person, 10 of them, right? And none of the healthy people got sick. After spending time with 10 different people, purposely trying to make them sick, they couldn't do it. So, yeah, so there isn't any scientific evidence. And a study like that, it wasn't controlled, but it doesn't matter, because the thing with controls is it's when you do get an effect of interest, you want to be able to weed out other possible explanations. But in those studies, they couldn't get the effect anyway. So it doesn't matter if there were controls or not. Like you didn't succeed in making anyone sick. But then we all know, like we do, like, you know, certain people walk in the room and you just don't feel that great, or someone yawns and you start yawning, or you hear stories of women's periods syncing up, all kinds of things where it seems like the presence is affecting others. So yeah, I don't know if there's like, maybe there's an element where it's someone that you're closer to and you're kind of more connected to them to begin with, or situations where, well, it seems like the mind is very powerful too. So if you're someone who has a strong belief that being around sick people will make you sick, you're probably like more likely to get sick. So yeah, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, and it's something, you know, of interest. But like you're saying, they can't actually show that there's this particle that goes from place to place and gets passed around in the ways that they say it does, and that they claim to test us for, and that they claim to insert things into our arms to protect us from them.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely don't have anything to back up that whole narrative.
No, exactly. One of the big clues for me was that the word itself, virus, means poison.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked it up one day early on, and I went, "Oh, okay." And then I'll hazard a claim to say poison is contagious. It is easy to spread poison, and you know, someone that's, say, really toxic, so toxic that you can smell on their skin, on their breath, in their vibe, you know, just being super negative. There is a transmission. I'm not going to go into a sauna with somebody who has dosed on garlic, because it's poisonous. That sulfur is also poisoning me. Some people think garlic is healthy. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so there are some cues. I like, somebody said energetic transmission. Say this time of year. It's very, very common in Canada, and you go around, and there's a good number of people who've been detoxing. Like it is a normal thing. That's why they can take advantage of us and pandemic us in the first place, because there are these seasonal kind of detox. Well, you know, Garrett would say, "Oh, your body sees that the long winter is coming, and it's not going to be ideal to detox. Detox now." Get some of that stuff out of the way. It'll prepare you to hunker down for the winter, and so it's just a natural thing. And then the spreading of poison, that's very easy to do. Spray it in the sky, put it in, like you said, the water.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then it can look like a contagious event, because people in that area start getting sick at the same time. And I mean, even if they're, like, the thing with this supposed germs, their whole story is it's especially scary. It's kind of a unique type of poison, because they say that it replicates, right? And bacteria do replicate, but they haven't been shown to cause illness. But so it's like, if you have a toxin in you and you're spreading it to others through intimate contact or whatever means, in a sauna or what have you, at least in that situation, that thing is, nobody's saying that a poison is going to get inside of you and replicate, and then you get more of it, and then you can spread it, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Exactly.
At least with poison, like, you're talking about a finite amount of something. So then if you do spread some to other, well, okay, some will still be in you, or it goes somewhere else. So it's a different sort of situation.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I
It's
don't know.
giving poisonous.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the word. Yeah. So I know other people like Dr. Stefan Lanka and the Baileys and Mike Stone and Tom and Andy, Tom Cowan and Andy Kaufman. They can talk about the history of virology. I don't have a good memory for that kind of stuff, so I tend to stay away from it. But apparently, yeah, over the years, through the history of virology, the virologists had different ideas about what they were calling the virus. So they used to, at one stage, they thought it was a protein, and eventually they came onto this idea that there's genetic, a genome with a shell around it, and then they say some of them have an envelope. But at one point, initially in Latin, it means poison, and so that makes sense. Like, yeah, we get poisoned and we get sick.
And we need to detox the poison.
Yeah.
It's going to come out and it's going to look like sickness, but it's actually the cure. Your body letting it out, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Let's kill the cure at all costs. That's the next level, to make sure that poison doesn't make its way out of people's body, and it can look like sorcery. Absolutely. There was, hey Jen, and Paul and Mike New and all kinds of good people are here. Jen, you said something earlier I wanted to go back to. I think that we could talk about here. Okay. Yeah, so this is what I would call a natural fallacy, that if it's found in nature, say all of the poisons that are found in nature, that by the same theory, a virus is found in nature, right? Like in the bugs or in the mosquitoes or wherever they come from, bats, I guess is the word I was looking for. And so, yeah, it's very true. In this case, fluoride does occur in nature, right? It's an element, but because it's natural doesn't make it good for you.
No.
Guys,
and
gotta drop that.
That's one of the things with the public health establishment when they're putting out their little bits of propaganda. It's one of the things they almost always, very often will say right off the bat. Fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral, right? Well, first of all, what they don't tell you is the naturally occurring mineral is calcium fluoride, and that's not what they're putting in the drinking water. They're putting an acid that they collect from the smokestacks of the phosphate fertilizer industry. And you can find news reports if you go to YouTube and put in fluoride acid spilled, or hydrofluorosilicic acid is one of the names for the chemical. It's a mouthful.
Well done.
You might just put HFSA or fluoride spill. I know there was one in Florida. This stuff is so toxic. It literally eats through the parking lot. Like, the people have to come in their hazmat suits, and it's eating through the parking lot. It's used in industry, all sorts of applications for etching glass and, all kinds of things. It's known to be really hard on the equipment at the water treatment plants. The workers don't like using it because, it's a very dangerous substance. And I don't know if you would remember, I forget what year it was, but maybe roughly 10 years or so ago, give or take, there was a really bad accident. I don't know if you would have heard about it because you're not in Ontario, but it was a really bad accident on the Highway 401 in Ontario in the wintertime near Kingston. And what had happened was there was a big pileup of vehicles, and there was a tractor trailer carrying this chemical. And the driver ended up dying because with the collision, this chemical went on him. He died. A bunch of first responders were hurt. It was a big environmental. They needed a big, a proper environmental cleanup. It was a big, big deal. And that was another issue too with the water fluoridation, even transporting this stuff in our roads. And the funny thing was, I know I'm going off topic here. Sorry, we'll get back in a minute. But just going back to that, what we were talking about earlier about how you can show them this information and it just, the authorities, they don't care. There had been a meeting at the region of Peel, and myself and other people delegated, and one gentleman, Thomas, I forget his last name, he had brought MSDS sheets, the data safety sheets for these chemicals, and he's reading it off and telling them all the alarming things that it says. Well, they're laughing, and like Bonnie Crombie, who was the mayor of Mississauga, like she was snickering. They're like, "Oh, you're so ridiculous! Like that's for the people handling it. You put it in the drinking water, and it's diluted. You know, it's parts per million, and you know." And he was saying, like, this is a, you know, we had been saying it's a hazard on the roads as well. It's just a hazard, period. And literally within a day or two, maybe 3 maximum, I think it was a day or two later, that accident on the 401 happened, and they were being very vague, some kind of fluoride related chemical. And I start tweeting to the media saying that sounds like hydrofluorosilicic. Sure enough, it was hydrofluorosilicic acid from the supplier that supplied the region of Peel. It might very well have been headed for my community so they could dump this crap in the drinking water. Oh yeah, so yeah, so that's what they actually put in the drinking water. It's contaminated with arsenic, lead, all sorts of other things, radionuclides, what have you. And then they say that it breaks down in the water, but they don't have any experiments to actually show that. When they do, sorry?
It's almost impossible to remove from water. Every filter process will take, might take everything else out, but not the fluoride.
Yeah.
You have to distill or reverse osmosis.
Yeah, or get really expensive filters, special filters. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, they'll say that it's natural. Well, that's not what they're putting in the drinking water, number one. And number two, like aluminum is, they'll say fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral. I think it's the 13th most abundant mineral in the Earth's crust. I think it's 13th, if I remember correctly. Well, aluminum is much more abundant. It's much higher up that list. Does that mean aluminum's safe and we can put that in the drinking water? Like, obviously not, right? Arsenic, lead are natural. It doesn't mean that they're safe. So.
Exactly. Another fallacy saying there's a lot of it, therefore it's good for you. Like,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
right? This is just, we live in poison world, as far as I can tell. So yeah, really interesting. Poison. A poison is a poison. That sometimes people also turn to a fallacy. This is really off topic around health, and they'll say, "Oh, well, it's a poison for you, and it's not a poison for me." And this is absolutely garbage. Yeah, the poison may be dealt with differently in your body. You might be at a different level of toxification or health of your liver, and you're going to see different things. And there's other factors, how you're suppressing your own detox processes are very, very common with poison. By the way, that's exactly what suppresses the detox, which makes it even amazing that people still get sick. It doesn't matter the dose. They always say, "Oh, it's dose. The dose makes the poison." It's like, no. I run into this with a number of compounds, and it's working both ways. For example, copper is something that has been touted as a natural health, necessary nutrient. It's like, no, it shows up. It's abundant because we are inundated with it.
Oh wow.
Water, copper pipes, IUDs, never mind copper supplements. Most of the foods that are propagated as the ones we should eat are very high copper. I junked out on copper. Anyone who's got a chocolate addiction is taking in massive amounts of copper along with their caffeine. And it's addictive. Poisons are addictive. This is another major factor that people don't understand when it comes to this, like virus equals poison. We actually get addicted to that, what is poisoning us. And they're almost always stimulants. Like, caffeine is an insecticide, nicotine is an insecticide. And so they've managed to sell us the garbage, really, right? When we're talking about, they've sold us aluminum that's, or is it salt that came from aluminum smelting that they made food product out of? There was at least some level of it at some point.
Not sure, sorry.
Yeah, now there's so many different salts, so it might have just been the, table stuff. But yeah, they managed to sell us their garbage. Industries don't want to waste. Yeah. It's costly to deal with things properly. So, let's put it in the water and call it food.
there's a memo from the EPA. It's on my website. I don't know who originally got a hold of it. It's from the director or somebody high up at the EPA years ago. And they're saying to, I don't know, somebody else at the CDC or somewhere, and they're like, yeah, hydrofluorosilicic acid, it's a huge problem for the industry to get rid of. Well, they had to start collecting it in the smokestacks of the phosphate fertilizer industry, because if it went out into the environment, it was hurting the crops and the animals and whatnot, right? So they were regulated and told you have to collect it. They have something called scrubbers that collects it. And this stuff, like I said, it'll eat through a parking lot. So they need special containers, and it's like an expense for the industry to deal with this stuff. And so there's a memo from someone high up at the EPA saying, yeah, this is a great solution. We had this problem of how to get rid of this hydrofluorosilicic acid, and now we can just put it in people's drinking water, and that solves the problem. Like literally, and the communities pay for it instead of the industry having to pay to get rid of it. We pay them to take this stuff off their hands.
Exactly. We buy the poison to poison ourselves with. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Madness. So I would love to, with the time that remains, turn towards, behind the scenes, what is going on for you? What has it been like to be how did you phrase it earlier? I always call myself these days an outlier among outliers. And you seem to reflect that. What was the word that you used for it? I can't remember.
Oh, the fringe of the fringe.
Fringe of the fringe. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so what's that been like for you to come out before there was any support, before you had connected with the likes of Andy Kaufman and
Oh yeah, that was very strange. It's still very strange for me. Like just on a personal level, because I was always very shy. And when I first did an interview, I was so terrified. Like I still don't look forward to it. It's not I was never outgoing, and I was always camera shy. So it was like a huge thing. And it still seems very strange to me that anyone wants to hear anything I have to say about anything. Never thought I'd be in that situation. But I always say, it's a reflection of just how ridiculous virology is, that just anybody could come across this information and see how ridiculous it is. But yeah, it's been, it's just been a huge, so many things of the last 5 years, we've all learned a lot, I'm sure, over the last 5 years about government in general and all these various rabbit holes. So yeah, it's been, it's kind of something where I struggle. Like I would, part of me would like to just walk away from it all and like, the hell with this. I got to get on with my life. But then when you've done so much and you have this evidence, and I know I'm the one that can speak the best about the FOIs, because I'm the one that did a lot of them myself, and then collected them all and put them on my website. So yeah, I could feel like I have to keep going. And yeah, it's just, it's kind of a weird situation to be in.
It has the ring of sacred purpose. It's usually like that, where God tells you to do something and you're like, really? Are you kidding me? I have to do that?
Yeah.
And I'm compelled, and I won't be able to sleep at night or live with myself if I don't?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's funny. A few years before it all that got started, I was at a spiritual center for an event, and we were sitting in a circle, pretty large group of people. And there was a lady who was the guest, and she was leading us through a meditation, and I had a good friend beside me. And during this meditation, I had this image of like this very erect, image of a certain type of native man, very, very straight and very serious looking guy, like just very serious dude and very on point and straight. And in the vision, he put something on my shoulders, and it was very strange, because it was like a pole. Well, what it was to me was, the IKEA curtain rods, those black curtain rods, and they're about that big around. And it was like that. And it was like, and then my friend, when the meditation was over, she said she had seen the same man and that he was there for me, but she didn't see the part about the pole, the curtain rod on my shoulder. And it was funny because it was like I puzzled over that for a long time, and it felt like a responsibility on my shoulders.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was lightweight. It wasn't really heavy. So it was interesting. That always kind of stayed in my mind that there's going to be something that I'm going to have to do, and it's going to be hard, but it's not too heavy. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I pulled on the Wizard of Oz metaphor for the title of the stream, pulling back the wizard's curtain, and see, I was just thinking about that metaphor of being the one who goes to pull back the curtain, and how terrifying that can be when you're coming up against what you can only imagine is the beast, or and then pulling it back and going like, oh, almost nobody in there,
yeah.
right? Almost nothing going on here.
That's literally what it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because of the fluoride stuff, like one thing that happened to me that I think had a big influence on me was before the hoax began, I was living in an apartment, and I happened to be right across the street from City Hall. Like they were literally right across. So you're in an apartment, you only have windows on one side of your home. There's only one direction you can look. And all I saw every day for 10 years straight was City Hall right in my face. And I was on above a plaza. It was a nice apartment. It was a 2-level apartment, but it was above a plaza. So there was no yard. It was just our building, the sidewalk, a narrow 1 lane each way street, and City Hall, like really close. I could almost throw a rock across the street. And that's what I looked at for 10 years. And during that time, I knew that they were doing the water fluoridation, and I was obsessed. And I just got like, I'm going to bring you fuckers down one way or another. Like that was how I felt, like somehow one way or another, I'm going to get you guys, not to hurt them, but I mean to expose them. And I felt like that was a big part where, yeah, it just became this mission. Like I'm going to get you guys.
Right. Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I've been trying to read the archetypes around it, and it's when you say I'm going to get those guys, what would that outcome be? How would it look?
It's to, I never want to hurt anybody. Like it's not about, and I'm such a softie. Like I probably wouldn't even be able to put someone in jail. Like I wouldn't want to be that person. Like other people have to make those calls as to what is done. But it would, in terms of like destroying what they're doing, what they're getting away with, exposing it, and bringing it to an end. I mean, I don't know that if it's going to come to an end in our lifetime, but I certainly hope so, and do what I can to help bring it about.
I mean, you've been incredibly influential in my life, and then the lives of people that I touch, and there's the ripple effect. And Alec was recently sharing some articles that ended up, was one of those even yours, in the chiropractic magazine, which is very mainstream these days, right? And every person that stops being afraid of some fictitious scenario of disease and turns the tables to, oh, how am I responsible? How can I respond to this, and not carry the weight of all of the worry that so-and-so is going to kill you. Like my poor sister, every time her kids would be sick, I'm like, oh, everybody get away. And just the frame of mind itself is toxic, that we are a danger to each other. And of course, isolation is a massive part of the strategy to keep us from really connecting and talking to each other. So it's, your work has had a very profound effect, and maybe we won't see the full fruition of it in this exact lifetime, but you can't put this cat back in the bag.
No,
right?
There's no way. No, I feel like in a way I was just lucky. Like I stumbled across Andy's information, and he explained it so clearly. And then I had done some freedom of information already. So I just thought, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start challenging them. So I just kind of got lucky in that regard. So I'm grateful for that I had the opportunity to do something that actually could make a difference. And there's so many people helping too, like obviously it's not just a handful of people. There's all kinds of people helping and doing the parts that I'm not so good at, which is talking, especially, in person or that kind of thing. Like other people are out there showing the information. So I am hopeful we were going to see some kind of shift in our lifetime. Even I think it's already begun. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had a conversation with my sister who's been fully employed by the medical system as a nurse, and she let me say all kinds of stuff this time. And not that it was agreeing with me, but you could see she was at least expanding to see how I could think like that without being critical or needing to defend her position or anything like that. That there is such thing as critical mass, right? When there's enough people around you able to just ask a question and entertain the fact that they don't have all of the information yet, that is contagious. I'll just use that word, right? Like it's like, oh, well, if they can open their mind for 10 seconds, maybe that won't kill me too, right? And this is the positive influence that our lives have on each other. It's why I'm a huge proponent of people really doing the inner work, because you don't understand what a ripple effect that has on the people around you. That it may or may not. It's polarizing. People may or may not choose to come along because it's a question of free will. But at least you make it more possible when you step out and make courageous, purposeful moves.
Yeah. Sorry, there was something I was going to say. No, I just totally lost it. But yeah, sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just going to say thank you for that, for being a pioneer in this arena and going through all of the, I'm sure, like incredible attacks that must have taken place at times. And
yeah, there's been some of that. I always kind of feel safe though. Like I've had moments where I get a little nervous about things, but for the most part, I feel safe. So
people haven't tried to take you down and out?
No, I don't think so. I had one night when I went for a walk and I thought somebody was after me, but I think it was my imagination.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was first waking up and I got so paranoid. It's like, oh no, I know, they know, I know. And I'm going to come home and be in my garage when I drive in and waiting for me and stuff.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. You're saying about people getting more open-minded. Just a couple of quick stories. Like I have a friend in BC where, the ostrich situation was playing out, and he's known for years about, what we've just been talking about. And so every chance he gets, he's trying to share this with politicians and whatnot and people in media. So he ran into, I guess he lives in a smaller community, and he ran into the member of parliament for his area in a grocery store and ended up having a conversation with him. And he brought up that the 2020 supposed thing hadn't been shown to exist. And this MPP at the MP, he already knew. He was already aware. He didn't act surprised or anything. He's like, he realized that. And then my friend said, well, that's also true for the bird flu situation. And then the MP was like, oh no, kind of thing, right? But so that happened. That was interesting. And then actually going back 2 or 3 years, I was in a town outside of my hometown, still in Ontario. And I'm walking along the main street and I happen to notice, here's the office for the MP. Here's the office for the MPP, the federal and provincial members of parliament. And so I popped into both of them unannounced. And of course, they always tell you that the person's not in the office. But I spoke to their assistants in both cases. And I start telling them, like, there's no evidence for this supposed thing. And neither of them even batted an eyelash. Like, I was expecting them to act like I was cuckoo. And they didn't. And I was like, I think there's been people who know for quite a while.
Exactly. Yeah, there is people, that's why propaganda needs to be constant and repetitive, and you can't let up on propaganda because people forget when there's no actual substance or knowledge to be had. They forget the propaganda. The impression wears off and they stop being afraid and they stop, observing regulations, and they just live their normal life that's more based in truth compared to the lie you have to tell them over and over and over.
Right.
Right. Same with advertising the crappy thing. They have to pump a lot of money into continuing to advertise, because you're not going to remember to go eat the crappy thing for the
Yeah.
most part. Right. They don't need to
Exactly.
advertise basic whole food. It sells itself.
Yes.
Right. Because you want that. So yeah, maybe just a last question here around, is there anything that you feel like you learned about yourself that you maybe didn't expect to see, or you didn't know over could be maybe since 2009 or since 2020?
I think just, well, I don't know if it's really getting to know myself better, but that whole thing of just being careful about what I say, because that's been a huge thing for me, like just how much that I don't really know. And through the last 5 years, realizing how many things that maybe we've been misled about that don't really look like maybe they're not true. And yeah, I've grown, of course, because, I had to force myself outside my comfort zone. So, and yeah, I don't know if it's really learning about myself, but I'm just at a point where I'm just kind of tired and I want to walk away, but I won't, because, gotta just keep plugging away at it. Yeah.
Nice. And do you think there is going to be next steps, or there are going to be next steps for you in a different arena, or have you kind of find your
Well,
home base right now?
I'm kind of, I'm helping somebody with something else, like kind of behind the scenes, and there'll be other things, but yeah, I don't really know what my future holds. All I know right now is I'm working on a letter to the Minister of Transportation that touches on the legal names and who owns the vehicle and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing earth shattering. I'm sure a lot of your people know about that already.
That's okay. Yeah, no,
I
it's
just like
research
poking
is
at them and trying to gather a little more information and whatnot.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. No, I admire your diligence. So I'm posting, this is a clickable link to Christine's Facebook profile. If you don't mind, I grab that for
No,
you. And the website with all of the information about fluoride. And then Christine does a wonderful Substack that comes out very regularly. It's funny, I get notifications at the beginning and then I stop getting notifications. I don't know why that would be. And yeah, I think that's all. If you'd like to share out this interview, I appreciate sharing this link in particular that goes to the blog, and it has all of the recording links. This interview will show up on Spotify, Spytunes. That's different. iTunes and Spotify. Oh, it's funny. It keeps doubling up the link there. And yeah, so this is a good one to share out, and people can catch it on multiple platforms. And I appreciate everyone in the chat. And thank you, Christine. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you and speak with you finally.
yes,
Admiring
yeah,
from a distance.
appreciate it.
Yeah, if
Likewise.
anyone, thank you. And if anyone is interested in the work that I'm up to, you can visit bethmartins.com. I always invite people to do an archetype quiz. I should have got you to do it, Christine, but it's not too late.
Oh yeah, I'll do it now. I'll do it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, it only takes about 10 minutes. I can direct message you the link after, but here it is on the chat as well for anyone that wants to do that. Find out where on the path of purpose you are, so you can get a little bit of insight into the gifts and the shadows, which often are like gold when you find them, because when you find a shadow, it means that's a place you are losing energy, and you're not able, when there's energy lost, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just tied up. You can't take energy out of a closed system that we're in. But nonetheless, you're going to experience it as a loss of energy. So I'm all about people reclaiming the energy that they naturally have, so we could be free, not just free from the lies and free from tyranny and free from being poisoned, but the actual birthright of the source of our own existence. That's what I'm a stand for. So I do coaching and courses, and I help people decode what is going on in their own inner life, so they don't have to spend forever doing it. Let's see. There's one last question. Do you want to take one last question from the chat here? Just, were you harassed during the lockdowns?
A little bit. I had, a couple of situations where I was shopping, and I didn't cover my face. I was kicked out of a park in Brampton. Had gone to the park one morning when they had it all locked down, and just because I had a migraine coming on, and I desperately needed to be in nature, and I was living in an apartment, and got kicked out. I might have put up a fuss, but I couldn't with the migraine coming on, so I just left. And then I lost my job where I was working at the time because I wouldn't wear the mask. So
Right. Yeah.
those are the main things.
Yeah. And not to diminish it, the usual stuff, the normal stuff
Yeah.
that we all had to, the abuse that we had to put up with was really staggering.
Yeah.
But again, thank you very much for being here. I totally appreciate it. It's been wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you, Beth. Take care.
Thank you as well. All right. I'm going to set up an outro that is recorded by my son. He's playing his guitar, and I wish you guys have a beautiful rest of your day while we get played out here. Okay, bye for now. Oh, by the way, I'll just let you know too that we'll see you back here Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central Time for Beth of Fresh Air. That comes from many people sending me comments over the years saying that, Beth, you are a breath of fresh air. And this week, if in case you didn't hear the very beginning, I'm going to do part 2 of Remember, which is a very big subject, it turns out, and highly instrumental in all kinds of ways that we perceive and navigate in the world. So lots of love for now, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. See you Friday. Bye, guys.